Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday Space Show program, and I'm your host for the afternoon, David Livingston, out of Las Vegas, where we are located. Thank you very much for joining us. Just a couple of very quick announcements. We're looking at a 90-minute with a hard stop show today, and we have quite a few interesting programs coming up for both Hotel Mars and the Space Show. So I urge you to check our newsletter, which will be published by early tomorrow morning, and that's Monday morning, and also the upcoming show menu on www.thespaceshow.com, which will be completed later this afternoon. I will point out that Dale Scran, who's getting a lot of publication and work right now on Howard Bloom's blog for what's going on. I'll leave it for you to find out rather than me to tell you everything. Is our guest on Friday, and looking very, very much forward to having Dale back on the program. Please don't forget we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We are listener supported. We appreciate your support either through PayPal, which is on the upper right corner of our website homepage, or Stripe if you're a Substack user. We have a couple of sponsors with us today, so we also appreciate your sponsorship. John Jossi has the best uh, blog I've seen for space settlement progress. Really outstanding. AJ's a sponsor with his hypersonic company, Astrox, and the others are all really strong supporters. And Joe Luttrell is an old friend, a guest from many, many years ago when the space show started, when he was learning how to fly. And we appreciate him being with us today. And our main guest, who John Jossi is going to introduce, is Lisa LaBonte, which is right here. If you can see my cursor on her picture. And she's going to share some documents with us. John, you want to tell us who Lisa is?
Sure. Thanks, David. Yeah, Lisa is an investor with Carnegie Ventures. She's a global entrepreneur with a penchant for tech and venture finance. She's built 7 companies, raised over 225 million, introduced over 8 billion of venture capital into emerging markets, and has served as an advisor to 4 incubators, 3 venture capital funds, and over 100 small and medium-sized enterprises. So I caught up with Lisa at ISDC. She participated in the Friday morning plenary on, it was an investor panel, and it was founders on the future of the emerging cislunar economy. And she also gave a talk that afternoon on purpose-driven space companies boosting international development. Lisa was last on the show in May 2021. So welcome back to the Space Show, Lisa. How are you?
Thank you, John. I'm fantastic. Thank you. It's good to see all of you.
Yeah, start us off with an overview of the growth of national space agencies and programs, which currently are numbering around 90, and how it's impacting international development on Earth and in space.
Sure. So the idea for this was really to sort of introduce all of these space agencies that even 10 years ago didn't even exist. So we've seen a lot of growth in the past 10 years. It's kind of ballooned. And so I've got something on the screen right now, and I believe it's available. David, is that true? It's available to others that are viewing somewhere.
Well, they should be. I see it very clearly. Does anyone not see it here in the
No, it's on
wisdom?
your blog, David. It's on your blog, right?
Yeah, I think it's on the blog as well. That's what you mentioned. So this is
Okay.
something that you can kind of look at later. But what I tried to do early on was I tried to say, well, why do we have this growth of all these space agencies that are very largely in a lot of the emerging markets and developing world? These aren't space agencies popping up in the Western world. They're popping up all over continents, South America, Africa, and Middle East is part of Asia. So they're just really, the growth is really exponential, and you wonder why. And so really the case could be made that a lot of these agencies were getting into the game to use space really as an economic tool and a driver for economic development. So I put this together. So these little dots represent not all, because there aren't close to 90, but you can kind of see where there are space agencies or space programs. Now, I've tried to map this out for you. Let's go back and let's take a little short refresher on the state of international development. So you can see here, remember back in the day when the third world, it was called the third world. Now they're called developing nations. It used to be called the second world. Now it's called emerging markets. So you can see the colors here. So the red were the developing nations or the third world. The orange were the second world or the emerging markets that we see now.
Okay.
Well, I tried to map it out. So in a PowerPoint, it's easier because you can actually overlay this. This is a PDF, so it's hard to overlay. But if you were to overlay the map, you can see that these little dots track very much with these emerging and developing nations. I can't move it, but you can look at it when you get a chance. And that's really something because you have to wonder, well, why? What's driving this? Okay, why are some of these developing nations moving into the space realm? So I think that obviously we talked about infrastructure. I mean, the greater connectivity, comms and navigation and all the things that come with that, imaging and the ability to do all kinds of things that they weren't able to do before is very important for their growth. And so you see a lot of that as a driver for this socioeconomic development in Africa in particular. It's not just something that's necessary to be, supportive of the growth that we're seeing across the continent of Africa, but it's transformational. It's also something where they're looking for workforce, you're looking to engage the younger populations. In a lot of these countries, there aren't jobs. There isn't a lot of hope for the future in some cases of what's going to look like for economic development for each person's livelihood. And so some of this is being done, I think, also to engage the younger generations and to start producing more economic viable types of activities that younger people can kind of get a hold of. And when you do things like that, you prohibit a brain drain. If you can get it going in your country, a lot of people don't leave. And if they do leave to go to school, they come home. So that's a lot of this all feeds together. And I think that's the last of these slides. There, not much more. This slide here, I want to call attention to this because if you're watching from somewhere on your device and you've got an extra device somewhere that you can look at, Wikipedia, I don't normally promote Wikipedia necessarily, but Wikipedia has a very good outline, pages and pages and pages. This is a screenshot of some of it. You can go to Wikipedia and follow along and you can see all of the nations and their space capabilities and the things that they're doing. It lists all of them. And so I highly suggest you check that out when you get a chance, if not now. And it's what's useful for it is it'll tell you the nations and what they're capable of. So are they launch capable? Are they looking at human space flight? Are they extraterrestrial exploration capable? Or are they just in the primary stages of creating, developing a launch capability or something like this? So it gives you all kinds of background that I'm not going to get into today, but you can kind of see that. And it's an interesting Wikipedia page for sure, because a lot of people have never once knew that Bhutan had a space agency, right? And so what's the progress on that? You can kind of see what that's like. So I suggest you go to Wikipedia, and I'm sure you can find it elsewhere. Maybe AI has a great overview as well. But these are all, emerging space agencies or space programs, and they're really ramping up in some cases. And the collaboration we're seeing is really wonderful. I mean, we've got a collaboration happening with the African Space Agency and China coming up in the 2028, 2029, China's exploration of the moon's South Pole. We've got Africa engaged in that. You've got Bahrain, you've got Peru, you've got a number of other countries engaged in this kind of collaboration, which is the first of its kind. We've never seen this before. So I think what we're seeing is not just a lot of these nations that were doing prestige projects like the UAE and the Mars mission. They started off as prestige projects or national pride projects and things like this, but they've really moved into the realm of economic development and much greater capabilities for even defense in some cases, certainly other types of needs that these countries have going forward.
Do you know if many of these countries support and favor private enterprise economic development, or are they looking more towards state economic development?
There aren't many that I've seen that are not looking for private, also private entities to be launched in the nation. Some of them have startup contests. Some of them have incubators for space. There's a growing number of those. So I definitely think that I haven't found many. I'm sure there are a few nations that are guarded, but most of them, no, they're wide open. They want to create economic development and using space sort of as that tool. So it seems like it's a very interesting time to be in the space realm. And we're looking at, McKinsey's done a really good report also, if you want to look that up. McKinsey did a report, referencing a $1.8 billion global space economy by 2035, which is coming up pretty quickly. And by all accounts, that could even be a low number. I don't know. But so there's a lot of reports and a lot of things out there if you're, to do a search about all this growth of national space agencies. I think it's a very interesting time. It's a very interesting area. So I would check those out. I can certainly, I don't want to keep talking, but I can certainly go continent by continent. We can talk about the kinds of things that are being done in regard to different countries or different things that they're working on. But I'll take a breather and let someone else speak.
Well, let me ask you real quick if they notice education in the countries tracks the development of space. That is, are they bringing in STEM courses into their, I don't know their school systems, but maybe middle schools or colleges or however they do it. Is that tracking also?
Yes, it is. And certain countries have specifically spelled that out. Other countries haven't spelled it out, but definitely it's something that they're doing. So for example, Bahrain has specifically spelled out STEM education, not just workforce development, but STEM education as an example. So yes, the answer to that is yes.
What about the public in these countries? Do they have a high space awareness? Are they aware of this focus of their government and education, or are they kind of oblivious into their own world?
I think it depends on the country. So for example, in places like UAE or Saudi, where it's highly publicized, I'm talking about emerging markets now, then the answer would be yes, it's heavily known. Other countries, I think it's becoming more and more known, but probably not to a large extent. But when it is known, it becomes a really big source of national pride. And then, more people spread the word, jump on the bandwagon, engage. So I think you're seeing different levels of understanding of what's happening in a country. But we're seeing, especially the emerging markets, where it's being heavily promoted that yes, everyone is sort of getting on board and understanding why. I don't know if everyone knows why, what the rationale necessarily is, but they think it's cool, and they all know Elon Musk. And it's one of those things where they can attach to space, just like anyone anywhere has wanted to be an astronaut when they were 7. Everyone seems to be getting a prize more and more. And I think it'll take time for some of the developing nations. It'll take a lot of time probably for it to really be something that they believe in, that it could be something that they could pursue. But for now, yeah, it seems like it's starting to pick up steam.
Marshall?
I was thinking along the lines that you were talking about the emerging markets, and obviously there's national pride in that they'll put money in and not expect money back. But what's the number one project that they think they're going to make money from? Because in the long run, money is where everybody goes.
So it's interesting, Marshall. I don't see them. So just like NASA, I mean, when I look at NASA,
Mhm.
I don't see NASA as in pursuit of money, right? So I see NASA
Mhm.
as in pursuit of their national goals, whatever those happen to be. Whatever the mandate is by the government or by whomever is making decisions. So I think it's the same thing. I don't see this as a money-driven explosion of space agencies. I see it as really an infrastructure. It's really what kind of infrastructure can we get out of this? And that
Mhm.
infrastructure then will feed the economic development, which then feeds the money, right?
Yeah.
Economic development feeds the tax dollars, or it feeds whatever coffers are there. And I think that that's sort of the driver for this, is the infrastructure. And the prestige has always been there, but I think the prestige is being trumped now by a lot of the infrastructure and a lot of the abilities
Mhm.
for them, these countries, um, to build out capabilities. Some of them are building sovereign spaceports, to create their own launch capabilities. They've got AI and data integration efforts underway. There's exploration on the horizon, whether that's themselves ultimately building out that capability or partnering and collaborating, like we're seeing with the China launch of the Chang'e, what's it called? Chang'e 8. We see that there's collaboration going on with some of those countries that aren't quite there yet, but they're jumping on the bandwagon to, hitch their wagons to other nations that do have those capabilities. And so I think that, and the more that happens, the more they get their appetite whet for really what they could be doing in the future. And
Mhm.
don't forget, a lot of these nations, whether it's Uzbekistan is making a really big play for space right now. And then you've got African nations like Egypt and Morocco and Algeria, South Africa, also making big plays for space. And a lot of these countries have vast natural resources. They may be
Mhm.
developing countries, but there's a lot of money there. There's a lot of money to be able to pay for the things that they are going to believe are valuable for them and for their infrastructure. So that's a wonderful situation. They're not just developing nations with no money. There's money. And when the government decides they want to spend it, extract it and expend it, they can do that. So I
Mhm.
think it's a very interesting time. I think.
Do can you tell if these countries have a specific niche that they focus on? Like, do they want to have a launch industry? Do they want to focus
Mhm.
on comms, Earth imaging, something of that nature? Uh,
Yep.
or are they generalist and still broad-based?
No, so I can go over, I've got a huge list. I mean, continent by continent, I can go over and kind of give you answers to that. I have to use my cheat sheet though, because there's lots of these countries. So for example, Africa. The leading countries in Africa, as I mentioned, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria seem to be the leaders in the African continent for space. What they're doing, Earth observation. They're doing agriculture monitoring, drought prediction, water resource management, food security. Disaster management, they're doing flood
Mhm.
monitoring, wildlife detection, cyclone tracking. Climate change, deforestation, coastal erosion, forest monitoring. Communications, obviously. They've got their broadband
Mhm.
expansion, rural connectivity, and government communications. And then they've got navigation, they've got mapping and land registration and urban planning. That's just Africa. Those are the things that they're doing that are really kind of the hot topics for Africa. So you can see that a lot of this stuff is really infrastructure in many ways, and a lot of it is really uh, geared toward creating a more solid economic base and a country that's got more um, manageable types of resources.
AJ, you can step in.
I think you kind of may have actually alluded to some of the question I'm going to ask. Well, um, the question I would say right now is that in this country, in United States, the interest in space is declining. At least at the high level, in the administration and all that. And also public, it's declining. But in many of these emerging countries, probably I think that the interest in space is increasing. I know it is increasing in India, at least I know it's increasing in China and many of the emerging countries. It's the curiosity level and curiosity quotient in that is really much more so than in this country. That's one thing. On the other hand, the amount of money that just being spent at NASA, $25 billion or so a year, if you were to add up all of these emerging markets and all that kind of things, money aspects, is probably, um, you know, much smaller percentage of or portion of that $25 billion just in space in this country. So, how do we sort of deal with both of these conundrums, so to speak?
The conundrum with the declining interest in space in the US?
Yeah, the decline in space in US, increase of space in interest in emerging markets, but the amount of money that they're able to spend probably is still very, very small compared to the United States is spending $25 billion a year. So, I
Mhm.
mean, there is a dichotomy here in a sense. So,
Right.
effectively, I think that, and from what you describe about what African countries are interested in, that's inward looking. That's looking inward from Leo, say, let's say, something like that, or Geo, or whatever, but looking inward. In other words, into their countries itself, not in terms of space exploration, etc., which is really a sort of related to the question, the first question I asked, the interest in space and all that. For example, in India, and the interest in space is there not just because it helps inward looking, but there is an interest in space in just, hey, what's there in the moon, and what's the story about this and that kind of thing. So that's kind of the dichotomy that I'm trying to get a handle on. They
Okay.
don't have a lot of money. I would certainly, having said all these things, I would certainly like to be able to participate in what you are doing. And so my third question would be, how can I do that? How can we do that?
Okay.
So yeah. So
A lot
those
of
are
questions.
the
Okay.
kind of,
All right.
yeah.
So let's start. So ISRO has done a fantastic job in India, and India is full of entrepreneurial minds everywhere you look, right? You can't they say throw a rock without hitting an entrepreneurial mind in India. So the
Right.
space program has been very wonderful and inspiring quite a lot there. I think that you look at the US, and I don't know, I mean, you say something that I'm surprised to hear. I don't work in the US. I work mostly overseas, but I'm surprised to hear that space is declining. But what I would say is, even if space is declining, NASA is always NASA. So because of movies and pop culture, NASA is NASA. And as you know, as strong as ISRO is, as strong as any space agency in the UAE or anywhere else is, Saudi
Yeah.
Arabia, pick a place, even in Europe, NASA is still a place where people want to go. They want to have connection with, they want to collaborate with. It's still drawing in the world into their realm in many ways collaboratively. So I think that if it is a fact that it's declining, the space interest is declining in the U.S., that's a sad situation. I don't know why that would be happening. I believe you, but I would say that it gives people opportunities to go as an American, for example, into these emerging markets and say, well, you know what? I'm going to go and do something here because this is sort of on fire right now. You talk about $25 billion budget for NASA. For example, the Middle East, Saudi, UAE, there's a $34 billion total budget there.
Really?
UAE, yeah, UAE alone. Okay, so that's a
Mhm.
34. That's the estimate of what they're putting together for their future. I don't know what the budgetary years are and all of
Wow.
that, but that's
Okay. Didn't know
that's
that.
been stipulated. So there's a lot of money and budgets being put together. And by the way, that Wikipedia page that I mentioned has
Mhm.
all of these things on it. It has budgets. It has a lot of things on it that you can kind of get some real intel from. You can kind of go in there and
Mhm.
poke around. And I suggest that you do that because there's all kinds of goodies that
I
you can
will.
find.
I will. Yeah. Mhm.
Um, the other things we can talk about maybe offline, but I definitely would love to talk to you some more about, how to get involved in a lot of these other things, especially what is it exactly you're looking into, what specificity. We can chat about that later, perhaps.
Sure. Yeah, we can discuss that. Is this? Yeah. Sure. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions.
Lisa, there's political competition between East and West. So does that show
Is
up in
there?
any of this? Yeah, just a little. Like who's signing on for the Chinese lunar program, who's
Mhm.
signing on for Artemis. that kind of competition. Does that tilt or alter or influence what you're seeing in these different nations and their efforts to get into space?
I don't think there. So, for example, China. So, if you want to look at the rivalry between, for example, US and China, um, I don't see other nations saying we're not going to work with China because China and US have this issue. So it's almost like people are these countries are not people, the countries are making decisions based on what's best for their national space programs and their goals. If China's an option, they're going to work with China. I think that I don't see them, standing and saying, well, we're not going to work with our enemies of our allies. I don't see that happening. And we see that with, like I said, the countries that have signed on to work with China on that upcoming mission. Those are countries that are allies of the US, but they're also working and collaborating with China on that launch. Do you know what I'm talking about? That China launch coming up,
Yeah.
Chang'e 8.
Uh-huh.
And so, they're building, I guess they're doing a robot, they're doing a rover, they're doing a lander. Pakistan's doing another rover. They bought payload space on that. China's put it out, I think 200 kg of payload they've offered up to anybody that wants to participate. So, I mean, it's that kind of stuff where if someone wants to do something and they want to go to the South Pole of the moon, they're not too worried about the fact that it's China. I
Joe?
haven't seen it. If it's like that, I have not seen people becoming political about this. They're looking at their self-interests and what their national goals are for their space agencies and programs.
Isn't
Joe?
UAE signed up with both United States in the Artemis program and also with China?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
it's
there you
kind
go.
of, yeah.
Yep. Good
Joe,
example.
go ahead with your comment. Joe?
Or at least the mute. Yeah. One of the things that, like what Lisa was saying about earlier, where they're looking at infrastructure, really these countries that in the work that I've been doing, they don't care how they get to space, but they care about getting to space.
Right.
The biggest problem is, sovereignty. They need to have sovereign assets. They don't want to have the threat of, well, suddenly the imaging isn't available. All right. They're trying to manage their crops, they're trying to manage water. We have a world that's changing. And think places are getting hotter, some are getting colder, rains are changing. They need to have a good grasp of that. And they want to have their own systems rather than rely on other people. And there's a bit of national pride that comes with that. But the reality is they're trying to solve problems so they can become more of what we would call a first world country. They want that. They want to move to that. And so they're now willing to stand up space organizations to do it. I've seen that firsthand.
Mhm. My question is, do these different developing countries, how are they interfacing with the elephant called SpaceX and like Starlink and well, there's Starshield, which is the U.S. military version, and how do the countries, oh, how do they perceive how they're going to work with the big elephant, SpaceX, and maybe even Blue Origin in the future, to develop what they want to get done?
Well, I think we're seeing a lot of these nations actually using Starlink. So right now, I mean,
Mhm.
the satellite up, the connectivity by satellite by Starlink is something that's been obviously it's gone global, and a lot of these nations are using Starlink right now. So are they going to build out their own capabilities at some point? Remains to be seen. Are they going
Mhm.
to, are the telecom entities that exist in some of these countries going to be building out different capabilities or satellite capabilities for the nation? That remains to be seen. Are there other companies that can provide connectivity and work with the telecoms? It just remains to be seen. But right now, what we've seen is quite a number of developing and emerging nations using Starlink to plug the gaps where they can. And so I don't know what the future holds in terms of if they're going to build their own. Are they going to continue to use Starlink? Is that more affordable? I don't know the answer to that. But right now, it's been very well received. I don't know that it's
Hmm.
been poo-pooed anywhere that I can think of right now.
Hmm. I was also thinking about using the U.S. based launch systems to launch the small country satellites in, so their satellites can get to space much cheaper than trying to develop their own rocket systems.
Well, we see that, but we also see there are other countries with launch capabilities. I mean, India has,
Mhm.
that again, that Wikipedia page
Mhm.
will tell you the countries with launch capabilities. And so, India is a great example. They've got their own rocket, they've got launch capabilities, they install satellites into orbit all the time. There are, a number of nations that you can see on that Wikipedia page. If you want me to grab my notes, I can grab them. But
Mhm.
um, there are other options besides the US, right? And
Mhm.
that's an important topic because the US has really got to start waking up to say we're not the only game in town. And the US hasn't been for a long time. I mean, it's not just yesterday that ISRO popped up a rocket. It's not just yesterday that this is some of these countries have had launch capabilities for, some time. So the
Mhm.
US, I think, is I won't say it's in for a rude awakening, but it really needs to start. The people doing uh, in the space business in the US and in the government at NASA and other places need to start really paying attention to these other emerging and developing nations and what they want to do and what their goals are, and then try to
Mhm.
collaborate with them.
That was,
Because,
Mhm.
yeah, from
I
a
was gonna,
national, good.
I was gonna say, has the US learned to play nice with the
Well,
emerging
it,
nations?
it better because if it doesn't, it's going to continue to lose. So if what AJ said that space interest is waning and the U.S. government is not going to learn to play nice with emerging and developing it, well, then we're in for a big, again, a rude awakening. So yeah,
Here, I have another question for you.
sure.
So where does AI enter into this picture? Because it's playing a bigger and bigger role here in the United States, probably China as well. They want to use space for data centers and other stuff. Are the
Yeah.
emerging nations starting to go into AI? Do they see it as part of space, or are we talking about two separate worlds?
I think that some of them do. I think that some of them are using AI analytics and trying to integrate that into some of their space activities, but certainly not all of them yet. And I am really the wrong person to start talking about AI because I have shunned it as much as I possibly can. So I'm one of those people. So, but you do see the AI integration and the analytics and things happening where, especially countries like, again, in the Middle East, in Saudi, in the UAE, in some of these savvy nations where they're really starting to utilize AI for that aspect of the space programs. In terms of data centers and all of that, I think some of these nations are looking at that. I don't know how far along we are with that. It's a lot of talk. I don't know what it really means. I mean, you've got to have the energy and the power to make it work. But yeah, I'll defer the AI question to somebody else, actually. So I'm sorry. I'm perfectly fine saying I don't know.
So many of these countries don't have a lot of power, and sometimes they have periods of no power. But I haven't
Mhm.
heard space solar power or even terrestrial solar power for energy or anything mentioned. Is that part of the equation, or they're not looking at
Or,
that?
well, are you talking in terms of data centers and the energy to fuel them and to
No,
power
just
them?
in their grids, and they're bettering their societies and moving into a higher state of humanity to have more energy. I have friends that they're students at different schools, and they do 6 months in Tanzania, for example.
Okay.
And so they've got one or two internet booths for the whole village that they're in, and they've got electrical power for 4 to 6 hours a day because they simply don't have it. So while they're trying to develop space and go in that direction, are they thinking that space may be an avenue for them to have reasonable power for their people? Is that part of the equation?
I would say, and I can't say this unequivocally, but I would say absolutely it's got to be in the plans in the future. I mean, what would you use space for if not, you're talking about infrastructure building.
Right.
And infrastructure is, the basic of infrastructure is energy and power and things like this. So I would imagine, now remember, China has been all over Africa for how many years now with the Belt and Road Initiative. So
Yeah.
I would wonder what I would wonder from your question, I would actually extrapolate and say, I wonder how China has been engaged in any of those discussions with infrastructure that would be fueled by space or any type of those applications. So it's a very interesting question. I would assume everyone ultimately that's got to be something that they'd be thinking to use space for. But I don't have any thing to back that up or to say unequivocally that this is I can't give you an example of that.
So nothing about the
Yeah, it's a
grid
great
or
question.
none of that's part of the Wikipedia page, for example. The
I don't think
grid
so.
or things like that.
No, I don't think so. No. But if you ask AI, I am sure AI will tell you and give you a nice little report that you can use somewhere. Yeah, I mean, that's what you ask AI for, some of those questions, and hope that it doesn't hallucinate and give you a wrong answer. Yeah, but that's a very good question, and it would make a lot of sense that would be a prime use of what they would be doing with their, with space, some of their space goals. Absolutely.
Do countries want to partner with the United States and NASA? I mean, is that like a goal, a priority?
I think most of the countries I've ever been to go gaga over NASA. Yes, I think that they would love to work with NASA. But again, do all of them? I don't know. Most of them that I've ever experienced, yes, they do. They really respect NASA. NASA is really sort of the 800-pound gorilla. It's very alluring to a lot of these countries. So we've got that going for us. So I hope that NASA leverages this and is leveraging this, because every day someone else is running around making plans.
AJ?
Aren't
Yeah.
there like 60 countries, over 60 countries that have signed up on the Artemis Accords?
Yes,
54, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
almost, yeah, upwards of 60.
Yeah.
AJ?
Yeah, I was, I guess, responding to your last question or point that you made, and I think you were really reflecting on space-based solar power. I would think that none of these emerging countries would be able to actually be able to or be interested in or be able to build infrastructure by themselves for space-based solar power. So effectively, it would be what Lisa just sort of alluded to, which is to use something that China has built or United States has built, or if ESA builds or something like that, use that for their purposes. I don't believe in SBSP, as you well know, but I think that as far as in terms of its economic impact, effectiveness, I think that many of these countries would probably be interested, and I think that many African countries are interested in small, micro-size nuclear reactors and all that for their energy needs.
Yes, that's
That
a
will,
growing, yes,
yeah, that's a growing thing, and
that
that
is
probably
growing,
will
yes.
come. Yeah, that'll come first before other things. So
Yeah. But to your point,
that's
AJ, yeah,
yeah,
but you bring up a good point too. I mean, the US has really, really not been highly effective in Africa. China
right.
has been China has been all over Africa for now at least a
Mhm.
decade. And we are talking about, and what are they doing? Infrastructure. That's what they're doing, is they're building
Yeah.
infrastructure, whether it's dams or whether it's energy, whatever it is. And so the
Hmm.
longer the US doesn't get its act together, especially when it comes to space,
Hmm.
China's going to be entrenched at that point. So I don't know. I don't know what the US has planned, but for now, of all the other nations that have space capabilities, China seems to be, and India, by the way, India is in Africa. India is not is no stranger to Africa either. But China's really been the one leading the charge in
Yeah.
a very, very big way. So you have to wonder, you have to hope that the US has some plans to be working with a lot of these nations. I mean, you've got the African Space Agency, which is continent-wide pretty much. Besides the individual nations, you've got, the larger organization now that is quite new, just popped up in 2025, and it's headquartered in Egypt. And so, you have to wonder, you have to hope that NASA is working with AFSA. To the extent
Yeah.
of what that means, I don't know.
In terms of, I mean, you mentioned you're talking about Africa and all that, but also Saudi Arabia. I'd heard that the delegation of ex-NASA people went to Saudi Arabia maybe 3 weeks ago or a month ago, something like that, to discuss space,
Okay.
to discuss all that. And I don't know, so what has happened to it, or what that means in terms of a future for Saudi Arabia in space. You probably has a better idea.
I'll try to find out what the last 3 weeks ago, I'll try to find out what that was, and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
But I didn't hear about that. I've been here all summer I'm in the US right now. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
but I'll look into that for you.
Thank you.
So we also, and probably China and probably Russia, are seeing space as both a defense and an aggressive forum. Whether we like it or not, I guess it's militarized already.
Yes.
How does that play out in the emerging nations?
So it's a good point. So what we see for space, defense, space being used as defense, we do see only a few countries that seeming are in that space seemingly at this moment. I haven't seen any other nations looking heavily into defense in an aggressive posture against the US or in any way that's not allied with the US. So I don't think that that's happening yet. I do think that there are some nations looking at space as, in terms of defense, but not in any aggressive posture or one that's not collaborative potentially. But, again, it's for these are national programs for national sovereign goals and needs. And so, it's not all about collaborating with the USA or even others. But I do think that I haven't seen any of these other nations besides, like you mentioned, Russia and China, North Korea. There are some other countries that are doing things in space for defense that aren't quite collaborative or with us. So I don't see that happening where you're going to have a lot of these countries right now. They're focused really on the rudimentary stuff. I mean, a lot of these countries are just popping up. Some of them, they have a space agency, but it really is they've launched a couple satellites. That's all they've got, right? So they're really, a lot of them at their rudimentary stages. And I don't think defense is really on a lot of the radars right now. But again, what do those long-term goals look like? You've really got to kind of delve into their national space plans to find out.
Is human space flight a long-term goal for most of them?
Human space flight is, but a lot of them, as you can see, are buying space on the Axiom to get to ISS, and whatever the precursor will be. I'm sorry, the what's going to follow the successor for the ISS is going to be. They're buying space on someone else's crew capsule and rocket. So, and it's probably cost effective that way. I mean, to build that kind of capability, you've got to, build your rockets, and it's a lot. India can do it, China can do it, Russia can do it, US can do it. There's some countries that have those capabilities, but to start from scratch to do that for yourself, I think that probably, if I was looking at a budget, that probably wouldn't be on my list of things to do if I can pay for seats elsewhere and not have to worry about it.
If we could make, if you could
but it's
make
on their
it-
radar. Human spaceflight is on their radar for sure. I mean, absolutely. So
if one could make investments to make money, private sector capitalism investments to make money, do you have a list of countries you would bet on and do the prediction markets, bet on
Like
space
Kalshi
success
or
for emerging
what is
countries.
that about? You guys, do you guys use Kalshi and Polymarket? Oh my God.
Well, we
I've
know of, I don't use any of it. In fact,
oh
it's
my
against the law
God.
in Nevada. They made it illegal in Nevada.
Really?
Yeah, because they want you to gamble in the casinos. So,
Oh,
Well,
so
but how can they monitor online? How do
well, you
they
can do things, I guess, online, but that you can't.
huh.
The casinos can't offer in their gaming rooms. They
Oh.
cannot offer prediction markets. So,
e-
so
even on
that's what it
even
is.
on
But
even on online, you have to tell them your state that you are from or address
Oh,
and state, and they don't let you do something.
so
really?
it's
Um,
kind of a tongue-in-cheek question, but like,
Okay.
if you do you have a list of priority nation states you would put money in
No.
and do you know if the prediction markets
I don't know anything
have a
about the
bet
prediction
on that?
markets. So
Okay.
let me just wipe that off the chart right now.
Okay.
Prediction markets, no idea. But what I would say is any investment that you're going to make into any of these countries, you'd really want to make sure that the country really has just the basic mechanisms for investment protection. So a lot of these countries, like for example, even the UAE, which is, obviously doing great things in space for the last, 10, 11 years. Um, there's not a lot of IP protection. There's not a lot of attorneys that understand IP. There's not a lot of uh, courts and judges that can, account for any type of cases for IP. There's not a lot of enforcement for IP, violations. So protecting your IP if you're doing something with space, whatever your thing is. So if you're doing something that doesn't have IP and it's not really a big thing and it's something different, but it's space related, well, okay. But if you're doing something that's really smart and has IP attached to it, you really need to make sure that the country, wherever you're making that investment, has the mechanisms to be able to protect your investment on some way, shape, or form within the legal system. There needs to be recourse of some level or something to be able to protect your IP, to protect yourself, if you're an entrepreneur or a founder looking for investment. If you're making the investment, you want to make sure that they've got the ability to get your money out. Who are investing in a local company? What does that look like? Because you can't sue a local company in some countries. How are you going to, what are you going to do if you find out that there's been a material breach of information? What are you going to do? You need to just make sure that if you're investing or if you are a founder that's going to go set up a shop in Abu Dhabi because they have an incubator for space, that's fantastic. But what does that look like for my IP then when I'm taking in investment dollars? Or what does it look like when I'm an investor putting money into a company that is it on the up and up? How do I find out? How do I do the due diligence? Some countries you can't even really do the due diligence. So on both sides. So when you say investment, I have two hats for that. So, you need to just make sure that whatever country it is, there's a mechanism for you to protect yourself, whatever that means. Um,
Joe, you got a comment for Lisa?
Yeah, I want to stick with investment, but of a different kind. With all these national programs that are standing up, do you see this as a way of generating, that national pride that generates interest in the youth, so that the youth start to become more engineers, and they start developing the job sets that are needed to push the country further in its goals? Do you see that as a big reason, small reason, not thought of at all? I
Again,
think.
so that's a great question. So it depends on the country. So for example, Saudi Arabia, let's take again Saudi Arabia and UAE. And that's where I've spent the last, 18 years. So let's go there. 19 years. Um, you've got two countries that have extremely robust, more so than even in developing the developed world in the West. These countries, Saudi and UAE, have extremely robust engineering talent that comes out of universities in the countries because of the oil and gas industry. So they've got enormous technologies like for water desalination and different technologies that are so far superior to what we have in the USA, for example. So they turn out
Mhm.
engineering talent at a very high level and they're very skilled. And not only are they very skilled, but because of the culture and you know, the past, tribal and Bedouin and all this, there's a lot of intuition and creativity that you see in the Gulf in particular, that is just, and in the Middle East in general, where there's a lot of extremely creative and innovative types of young people just waiting to bust out and to do something that's cool and interesting. And so I think space represents a really good opportunity for that. But there's already quite a lot of good engineering talent coming out. The STEM fields are very, very well known. Even, when I launched the STEM programs into the Middle East in 2007, no one knew what the STEM acronym meant. They didn't know what it was. They didn't like it. It sounded like stem cells. We don't like this word. What is it? But they were already doing it. They just hadn't there was no acronym that they used for it because it was mostly engineering, science and engineering, so based on math in the background, right? But so we've got different countries with different types of output. And I would imagine in some African nations in particular, like Egypt, again, vast engineering talent coming out of Egypt. And you see a lot of these countries that have mining and resource extraction that also have skilled students coming out of universities because they work in industries in their countries. So it depends on the country. And I think it depends on what the country's gross domestic product is and what they do for their economics. And then it kind of flows from there. But we see a lot of countries, particularly in the Middle East, where there's immense amounts of engineering talent coming out already. And a lot of that is just perfectly suited to join the space industry. I mean, it's just.
My question is, you're talking about all this STEM talent coming out, and then the previous question you talked about protecting the IP,
Yeah.
which leads to the question of, in the United States, a lot of high-tech companies are started by just engineering talent people saying, I got an idea, I'm going to go start a business and so on like that. And they can start a business. They have their own IP, they have their own business structure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you pointed out that, wait a minute, IP in many countries is not that well protected.
Right.
So what's the incentive for the engineers to move over to being entrepreneurs?
Well, we see that a lot of them come to the USA, for example. They go elsewhere, right? Because they know they can build something and it can be protected. So the incentive for them is, many of them are nationals. They're locals. So they have a much greater connection to their country because they're from their country. And they have a greater feeling, I guess, of comfort. Or they don't give it a lot of thought necessarily because technology startups and startups are not really, these regions were not built on startups, right? They're very entrepreneurial. Don't make the mistake that they're not entrepreneurial. They are extremely entrepreneurial, but we're talking about trade, building something that you're going to trade for value, entrepreneurial, making a deal, selling something. They're very entrepreneurial, but technology and startups and things like that were not necessarily something that they had been doing for, until in the last only 15, 20 years. They've been, depending on the country, it's been growing. But so the infrastructure for those types of investments and for those kinds of businesses and economic development in the nation hasn't really caught up. And we see it. We see the reason why a lot of these countries don't do better, why they have still a brain drain, why they can't keep their people at home after they go away for college. And again, some countries do a lot better than others. If you're from Saudi or the UAE, you go home. You would never think really about staying in the US. If you're from India, you don't necessarily go home. It just depends on where you're from. You have to have, if you're a young person who's dynamic and entrepreneurial, you have to have a feeling that you can make it and there's opportunity at home. If you don't feel that there's opportunity at home and the ability to make something that you can sustain because there's infrastructure in place to protect you, you're not going to do something at home. Or if you have to and if you're forced to go home, then, then there's different answers to that too. But I think that you've got to have a situation where the infrastructure supports some of these very high tech and high touch types of businesses. Otherwise, it's too risky. It's really risk. You're talking about trying to minimize risk. When you're talking about investment, you're talking about minimizing risk, right? And when you're talking about starting a business, you're also talking about minimizing risk. If you're smart thinking about that, you want to make sure that your business has longevity and that it's going to be, and, and I'll tell you, one of the biggest problems that I had, and it was a very big problem for me, was the political risk that I had never thought about. And the political risk that I endured was substantial. And never once did it really cross my mind. But, for example, when I started my programs, it was 2007, and they were all the rage for 4 years. The government, everyone was loving it. We had money coming from everywhere. Well, what happened 4 years later was the Arab Spring. Well, when the Arab Spring happened, then all of a sudden the governments in the region, in the Gulf in particular, said, wait, wait, wait. Oh, we do think youth is important. Let us do our own programs now. So did I ever account for them pulling their funding and saying, well, we're going to replicate what you've done in some cases, and then we're going to fund it ourselves. And we're not going to give you any more money, for example. Did I count on that? No, I never counted on the Arab Spring happening. So, you look at political risk and you don't really think about it, but you look at the war, look at this incursion war. What are we calling it right now with Iran and God knows, I don't know what it's called, but that just came out. We didn't expect that. That's been brewing for decades. We never expected that would actually happen. Well, I'm sure there are companies caught in the crossfire right now that are stuck because they can't raise money, they can't do this, they can't fly in, or they can't fly out. All kinds of stuff is going on. So they can't get a visa because the embassy's closed. This is stuff that you don't account for. So you have to be very, very careful, but a lot of it is just life.
Being terribly optimistic.
I mean, yeah, you've got to just be mitigate your risk as much as you possibly can on both sides. And then say a lot of prayers, I guess.
So if these countries are looking at space, what else are they looking at to develop for their countries? Like, does medical go hand in hand with space? Are they trying to improve on medical? Do they want to have an industrial thing? Do they want to make and manufacture auto parts or something to raise up a different sector of their economy?
Well, so you hit on a really good point. So medical is a really good point, and so is education, right? So what happens when you use space and satellites, for example, for connectivity? Well, then you're able to do remote education, also remote telemedicine, right? So you by just having space and satellites and connectivity, you automatically expand some of those areas that you can work with in the medical fields and in the education realm. But I think that, yeah, I mean, all these countries are different depending on what their needs are, but they have different key industries based on what is unique for their own characteristics. So like in the Middle East and what we see in the Arabian Gulf, we see fintech is a really big topic. Fintech is a really growing marketplace. Medical and healthcare has always been a big growing sector. Of course, you see space as a growing sector, and whether that's aerospace or exploration, it's both growing sectors. Aviation is a growing sector. It just depends on the country or the region. They have their own characteristics, and that sort of feeds and fuels the industries that are popular and that they're pursuing. And how does space then feed that and support that, I think, is kind of what we're kind of talking about here. And the whole idea is that this infrastructure, the mechanism, using space as that infrastructure mechanism, is really a key driver to economic development ultimately. And I think that that's what we're seeing with the growth of a lot of these space agencies.
So if I'm a graduate in engineering, let's just pick electrical engineering, of a respectable U.S. school, do I have more opportunity in a developed country like the United States? Or would I want to consider the opportunities that might be there in an emerging economy, assuming the political risk was not a big factor?
Are you an entrepreneurial minded?
Um,
Are you an entrepreneur?
I'm
Are
too
you
young
entrepreneurial minded?
I'm
Are
too
you
young to know that.
adventurous?
I'm too young to do that. I just graduated graduate school.
Well, okay. So I get your question, but you have to have the how should we say, you have to have the ability, the strength of spirit to be able to go somewhere else and start something new. So we have to know this, David. You have to do some soul searching as a young man and figure out what are you capable of? Because you don't just go overseas and start something. You have to actually have a strength of character to weather different things, to be able to go with the flow, and high tolerance for ambiguity. Do you have those things, David?
Well, I do, but I'm just saying, I guess if somebody's considering that as an opportunity, that
Hmm.
they probably intrinsically have a lot of those. Otherwise, they wouldn't even look at the job offer.
Well, so I would say that you have to be very careful too. So a lot of these countries hire nationals first,
Mhm.
and also the pay. You're going to get a job, or you're going to start a company.
And I was thinking they're going to at least initially be working for probably another company or a government
Okay.
agency or something
Well,
because they need
again,
engineers.
they need okay. So again, depending on which countries, they may or may not need engineers. But if they do need engineers, I think that you have to be very careful that they're not hiring local. And then if they are hiring international, then I would say, if it was me giving you advice as a young whippersnapper, I would say absolutely go do it. Absolutely. What a great experience. Nothing else. So I don't know how to answer your question, but I would say, you really have to have the fortitude to be able to go overseas and be in a new environment, maybe different language, certainly different culture. You have to be able to roll with the punches. You can't be an ugly American that's going to bitch and complain about everything because the food is bad and the roads are bad and the blah, 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 because that's going to be a real downer for you and everybody else around you. And you won't last long. So you have to really know yourself. But I think it would be awesome as a young graduate, if you have the opportunity to get a job somewhere else. Yeah, I would say, if you were my kid, David, I'd say, yes, go do it.
But you have that spirit, but you already demonstrated that.
Yeah,
But
I have that spirit. So, right. But a lot of people don't, and that's okay. But if you
so
don't, you should probably stay home.
so I guess what I'm hearing, it's not so much what the opportunity might be for your degree program that you graduated in, but whether you could personally and characteristically adapt to the
Correct.
environment that you're going to be
Right.
putting yourself into.
Yes. Yes. And again, you weigh that and you say, well, it's only they're looking for an engineer for a year, so I can deal with that for a year. Things depend on what the answers are, but yes, you really have to if you're going to go overseas. And again, are you going to Australia or UK? I mean, it's not quite the same as if you're going to Tanzania. It makes a difference where you're going.
Clearly.
So, but I think that you've got to be able to adapt and you've got to be able to hang in there silently. That's where the mute button comes in handy.
Marshall, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you're right on top of it. I think one of the biggest problem is probably going to be language. And second would be culture. You have to have a vocabulary to solve problems. And if you don't have a common vocabulary with the other people you're working with, you could be a brilliant person and get absolutely nothing done. And vice versa. You may be very conversant, but if you're not that good of an engineer, you're not really a big plus. So, yeah, you have to look deep inside yourself
Yes, you really
and
do.
make the decision to go do it and go do it.
Yeah. And also, like I'm a New Yorker. You can take the girl out of New York, but you can't take New York out of the girl. So I grew up in Silicon Valley, um, and my home is in Hawaii, but I'm still a New Yorker a lot of times. And so for me to go to a country that's slow is hard. I have to get into the zone, and it takes me a while, a few months to get into a different zone. So if I'm going to go and spend time in Malaysia, it'll take me a couple months. I get into the zone, then I'm great. Everything's fine. I'm in the Malaysian zone. Everything's chill. It's great. But some people can't get into the zone. And if you're in the zone, if you're in Malaysia and you're in the New York zone, you can't get out of that. You're going to have a miserable time. miserable.
Mhm.
So
And-
you just really have to know yourself, and you have to be willing to kind of, it goes back to, the comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone, right? You have to be really willing
Mhm.
to take some hits and to be able to roll with them and get up in the morning and not be a raving lunatic.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
I think the word is fortitude.
Yeah,
Lots and lots
fortitude.
of
Yeah, fortitude's
fortitude.
good. Yeah, that's a great word. Yeah.
We have a couple of people with us who have not been very vocal today. So for those of you that are sitting there like a stone, we'd love to hear from you. That's why you're invited to the program. So
Okay,
come
this
on.
is all right. This is Sherry. What caused you originally to want to go to the Middle East?
Oh, hi, Cheryl. Sherry, sorry.
Hi.
Um, Dr. Sherry. Well, originally I went to Japan. So I was in Japan first, and then I was in Asia, and then I ended up in the Middle East. But I'm an opportunist in the best sense of the word. I'm an opportunist. I love building things, and I like places where there's opportunity to build those things, and I don't have to trip over 26 people to do it. And it's a virgin market in some cases, and you can kind of build and do things your own way and kind of pioneer a space. So that's, for me, that's my thing. That's what I did. That's why I loved it.
Yeah, but you chose probably one of the most difficult cultures on earth for a woman.
In
And
Japan
so,
or the Middle
no, the
East.
Middle East.
Okay.
So how were you treated there? Were you treated sort of like an honorary man, or how did you get through there?
In my New Yorkness, yes. No. So yeah, that's funny. Great question. So Japan really helped me prep for anywhere else, because in Japan, there are a lot of cultural concepts that if you can master, you can really do well. Harmony, say you're sorry no matter what, whether you mean it or not, just you're sorry, and you smile when you least want to smile, you smile. And, things that serve you really well anywhere you are in life, especially in a long line somewhere and you want to scream and, be nasty. I think that Japan kind of set me up for a lot of what I dealt with in Asia and in the Middle East in particular. So I was treated with respect. I was always a professional when I went to the Middle East. I always dressed conservatively. I didn't wear short sleeve or sleeveless tops. I didn't wear mini skirts. I dressed professionally. I behaved professionally, and I was treated professionally. And there is a lot of misogyny everywhere, US in particular, but you get around it, you get around it. And you cajole and you let things roll off your back, and if they ever come up, you just sort of just keep going. But I didn't have a really big problem in the region. It was okay. I mean, you could tell when someone didn't really love the fact that you were a woman or whatever, but they respected you for what you had on offer in terms of business, and it was fine for me. What it doesn't go well for women in particular who, don't carry themselves well, or they giggle, and if you start to do those, you flirt, you do those things where you're flirty and everything else, then things can go sideways pretty quickly. So you just don't do that. You can't do things that you normally would do and not think about. You have to kind of do things a little bit differently. But yeah, I was okay there. I did okay.
What
Yeah,
your
what was
wife?
your educational background getting into this?
I had dropped out of college 3 times. No, I had a bachelor's degree, and at that point, 2 master's degrees. I had an MBA from a prominent school, and a Master of Science, um, and a bachelor's degree. That was my educational background at the time.
Mostly a business, but some science too, huh?
I had a Master of Science in Internet Strategy and Technology Management, but I had an MBA in International Business. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, and that's why I went to school for an MBA in International Business, because I wanted to do international business.
For,
Makes
for,
sense.
International business. Yeah,
for a totally non-space related question, but I know that we have a lot of pet lovers here. What's
pet
the
lovers? Did you
pet,
say pet?
dog, cat,
Okay, yeah.
My cat is
Japan
right behind
and
me, you know.
what's
My cat's over
Japan
here, yeah. Okay.
and Abu Dhabi and Saudi Arabia and the Emirates like for dogs and cats and pets?
Oh,
Is it a great
that's a
place for them?
oh boy. Okay, so cats in the UAE are everywhere in Dubai, Dubai in
Oh,
particular. Abu Dhabi doesn't
really?
have the problem that Dubai has. We have a lot of feral cats, a lot of stray cats, huge stray cat problem in Dubai. A lot of Brits in particular love cats, in particular, dogs and cats. So they get adopted, many of them. Many of them don't, but they get scraps of food thrown at them, and then unfortunately they don't get spayed or neutered, so they replicate. Uh, After a while, the municipality comes and takes them all and I don't know, disposes of them, and then rinse and repeat. As for dogs, dogs are not very well received, generally speaking, in the Muslim world,
Right.
because in Islam, if you have a dog in your house, the angels can't come.
That's
Okay.
the angels must
Yeah,
be
that
pretty screwed up.
I'm paraphrasing. Don't, but basically dogs are not, they're considered to be, I think, dirty. So, but that's not, there are Muslims who have dogs, but it's not a big thing. Um,
What
Not a
about
big,
Japan?
big
Was it a big
thing.
thing in Japan?
Well, in Japan, I was with a family. I had a lot of friends, and one of the families, they had a little dog named Wan Wan Chan. And if you know anything about Japanese, so you say, what does a rooster say? How does a rooster sound? Cock-a-doodle-doo, right? Right?
Yeah.
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 Yes? Well, in Japan, a rooster says, cookie cuckoo, cookie
Oh,
cuckoo. So in Japan, a dog, and how does a dog sound? Bow wow, woof
Bow
woof.
wow or bark,
Okay.
or something like
In Japan, it's wan wan.
that.
oh, yeah.
So the little dog's name was Wan Wan Chan, which is Little Mr. Dog. Little Mr. Barky, whatever, I don't know. They love dogs in Japan, and they love cats. So yeah, my friends that had animals were many. It's a good question. Yeah,
Just
animals are a
curious.
big thing. You see animals mistreated also sometimes, in cats in particular in the Middle East, unfortunately, with kids and things like that. You see that a lot of places. It's not just there, but yeah.
Is there a big interest in going to the moon with humans, living on the moon, going to Mars and living on Mars? Is that a part of what people think about or talk about, or they hear the news stories? Does it do
I
anything?
don't hear about that at all. I've
But what
never heard anybody excited about living on Mars or going to, no, I've never heard it. If people are talking about it, it's not my group that's talking about it. Um, and by the way, I have no interest. So maybe it's just me. I attract people who have no aspirations.
what about the moon? Is that the same for returning to the moon or going to the moon?
Oh, you mean as a nation returning to the moon or going to the moon, or as a
Or
person wanting to
individuals
go?
like
Yeah,
tourism or something like that?
I have no one that I know that has ever expressed interest in going to the moon or Mars. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sure they exist, but I don't know any of them.
Interesting.
And is Musk held, have you been there recently? Is Musk
Yeah.
out of favor like he is with parts of America now, or is he looked up to? What's
He's
the
looked up
word
to.
on SpaceX and
SpaceX is looked up to.
still
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
not following?
Although I will say, depending on the country, but in the Middle East, he's looked up to. But I'm sure there are some countries that are quite, it's politics, right? So I think with Musk, it's more about the Twitter purchase and all that would have soured some people on him. But no, not in the Middle East. They look up to him. Musk is yes, well received.
Yeah. That kind of brings up the question of what does the people in the Middle East think about Starship and its development? And well, Test Flight 13 it seemed like it was extremely well received, at least in Australia and the United States and Canada, the English speaking world. But you bring up a good point. I have no idea what the Arab states, um, Arab speaking people would think of a big rocket system like that. Have you gotten any feedback on that?
Well, I can tell you that even in the US, a lot of Americans have no idea what that is. Right. So,
Well, that's true, yeah.
I mean, this group does because this is a space group, but a lot of
Yeah.
Americans don't have any idea what that is, what it means,
Mhm.
where it's going, anything like this. And I think that that's the same in many parts of the rest of the world as well. People really aren't, it's not publicized, and you'd have to really be a space enthusiast or read space reports, or it has to catch your attention somehow. And I think that a lot of these nations are really kind of focused on their own internal types of things. I don't think anyone is really, there's not an overwhelming amount of people that I've ever seen or run into that are all fixated on Starship.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I also think that, it's blown up a couple times, or it's failed a couple times.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing. In many parts of the rest of the world, failure for us is, awesome. It's not a bad thing. It's like, it's just part of life. And so I wrote a book about this, by the way, AJ, and it's a English and Hindi book. It's called Instead of Crying, Just Keep Trying. And it's on the 750 girls who sent their space experiments up on the rocket. And the rocket failed to put them into orbit, and they lost all their experiments. And they built them all again. And the second time it launched, they were a success. And it was about those 750 girls that sent the satellite up. Azadi. Remember the Azadi sat?
Azadi? Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
For the
Azadi?
Azadi, the 75th anniversary of independence for India,
Oh,
freedom.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
So failure is not looked upon the same in other places by any stretch of the imagination. So when a rocket blows up or it doesn't succeed or whatever, a lot of people, right, like they check out. Whereas we try again, well, okay, fine. So I think that that's also something, if you fail, people might not really be so keen to keep caring about what you're doing because it's you failed. So failure is really thought about differently in other parts of the world. There's a risk tolerance that's just missing in a lot of places. There's a risk aversion is off the charts in a lot of countries because of culture. They don't want to embarrass their family. They don't want to be shamed in any way or shape or form by failing, so they don't try. Or it's not a positive. We don't care necessarily,
Lisa.
but yeah.
Very good points.
so
Very
you
good points
start-
about. Sorry.
You started out in 2007 by introducing STEM programs in the Middle East, right?
Right.
So are you still doing that? And how's that going? Is it increasing? And what about like you mentioned, girls launching experiments? Do you see those trends increasing among girls in STEM education because they're a little behind in the US?
Yeah. Yeah. Girls and space is a great equalizer. So space is a great equalizer for girls in a lot of these countries. So the girls are getting involved. The girls are doing more. There's lots of activity happening. They're very smart. As an example, when I talked about engineering talent that comes out of schools in the UAE, for example, there are more women graduating with engineering degrees than men by far. Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Wow.
So a lot of these women are coming out of school with engineering degrees. So when I launched my STEM programs, the STEM was only the underlying factor for my space programs, right? So I launched space programs using, STEM was the underlying foundational and space was the hook. So the space programs launched the same time that the STEM programs launched. And what we've seen is an explosion of people providing space education and space camps and this and that. That's been happening. So I exited the UAE, and then moved into Saudi. And now I really focus on other things. There's a lot of noise around space education, and I just sort of, to be honest, after all those years, I just sort of lost a lot of interest in some of the things that I was having to fight for. And so, when you're fighting for a lot of things and you're, banging your head against the wall because the government, they want to do things internally, they want to use nationals, they want to do this, they want to do that. It just becomes a situation where, as an entrepreneur, you make some decisions. And so we still have space programs, but they're not like they used to be. And I'm not really, I've got other passions now, so I've kind of moved on past that. But there's some things brewing, let's just say. I'll tell you about them next time I speak with you.
We're coming up on 90 minutes, so if anybody has a succinct closing comment, we'd love to hear from you. Or is there anything we should have discussed with you that we did not do so, we should have known about, but we're too stupid to know about? But anything
too
else
smart.
you want to add to the mix?
No, I would just reiterate, poke around and see who's doing what. See which countries, do you have favorite countries you've visited in your travels? Poke around, see what they're doing for space. Do a little dive, do a little, research, and you'll be really surprised, I think, to see what's going on in some of these countries. Countries like, look at Croatia. What are they doing? What's happening in, where have you been that you really enjoyed? Is Fiji doing anything? Check that out. You'd be surprised to see the things going on in some of these countries. And that's kind of fun.
Always
So,
like Greece. Does Greece have a space program?
Yeah.
Do they do anything?
You'd have to consult the chart.
John,
Do you want me to consult the chart?
yeah, John will ask you the question while you're
Let me
consulting.
consult the chart. All right, I got a chart. Greece. Okay. Go ahead, John. You speak while I consult the chart.
yeah, I was just wondering if you're, I know you can't give any investment advice, but do you have like an ETF or a space-related investment portfolio that is available for people to look at? I know you can't promote investments in this, but I'm just curious
John.
about that.
Yes, I do. And I will speak to you after this. I'll speak to you about this offline.
Okay.
I do have a couple of hot tips that are don't kill me here. But Greece. You want to know about Greece? Who asked about Greece?
I did.
Okay. They have the Hellenic Space Center. And they do they operate satellites and they build satellites.
Interesting.
Okay. Now they do not recoverable payload, nope. And first space, whoop. First, they've never had a first space traveler, but they build and operate satellites. But again, go to Wikipedia. I print everything out, so I'm really bad. But
Joe, okay, let's take Joe's question.
Yeah, when you mention these countries that'll surprise you with what they're doing, I do want to point out I was taken aback at how far Romania has come with their satellite program. And it's not the government that's driving it, it's actually the educational groups that are. Several universities and high school teams that I've had the pleasure of meeting have put satellites in space. And it's like, wait, your high school team is putting a satellite in space.
Yeah.
Your government hasn't, but you are. Okay.
Well, Rosa has had some very sad circumstances over the last 10, 15 years. So unfortunately, the space agency is not really driving a lot of that. So it is the students. You're right. These markets are very dynamic. You'd be very surprised, pleasantly, wonderfully surprised, and very inspired, I think, by looking at some of these markets. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually,
I
at
just
ISDC, the students
yeah.
who come there, I think the two of the biggest contingents are from India and Romania.
Yep.
Yeah, I
So a
just
lot
wanted
of
to
young students
emphasize that.
come from
ISDC, yeah,
Romania,
that's right.
ISDC, and India.
Yep, you're right. That's right. Now where are you? AJ, where are you located right now?
I'm in Washington, D.C.
You are. Okay, so I'm
Yeah.
here now too.
Oh, you are? Oh,
I'm here well, I'm traveling in and out in the US, but I'm here for the summer. It's
oh,
hot
you
in
are.
Saudi.
Oh, well, then let's maybe,
Yeah,
try to see if we can get
yeah,
together.
for
I'll get
sure.
your email address from Dr. David Livingston, and then I'm in McLean right now. This is
Oh,
my
okay.
uh, yeah.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
my
Okay.
girlfriend's place in McLean.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
yeah.
Okay.
So
And
yeah.
John, where are you? Marshall, John, where are you? Where are all of you coming from? Can I ask? John?
Yeah, Fremont, California.
Fremont. Wow. Okay. I was just in Silicon Valley. Close enough. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. I'm in Yukon, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
So,
We talked about that before with, okay, good.
yeah.
And John?
Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth, Texas. Cool. And Dr. Sherry?
Las Vegas, Nevada.
Wow. Wow. That's so cool. Okay. And Joe, I know where you are.
I don't know, where is he?
He's
Okay.
in
Joe.
he's in Pennsylvania.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Lancaster.
Yep.
Oh,
I
Lancaster.
dodge Amish buggies going to work.
Yeah, the Amish. That's right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, very good.
Any chance you'll be in Las Vegas? As you're
Yeah.
traveling around the country?
Yes, I will be in Las Vegas.
Well, you should let Sherry and me know.
I will let you know. That would be awesome. Yeah, I would love to start seeing some friends in the States because I've been away for a long time. So
Are you
yeah.
not in Saudi Arabia anymore, or we just left that and come back here?
No, I'm
permanently,
here
or-
I'm here for the summer because it's hot
I
and
see.
and there's a war going on and it's
Right, I see. Okay.
I just I've been here for quite a while since March.
Yeah, okay.
But I've been
So,
traveling in and out of different places, but the States. I've been in the States.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
It's hot in Las Vegas right now, too, I would like to tell you.
Do you have humidity?
Very little, but I
that's
have
good.
I have a driveway thermometer that reached 124 yesterday,
Oh,
which is, I know it reads reflected heat off the driveway, but the official temperature, I think, was 117 for my
oh,
zip code.
goodness.
Oh, really?
Sherry's a
I see.
little hotter in where she lives than I am usually.
Oh,
But
stay in the
it's been
house,
really
please.
hot lately.
Well, we have a
Yes.
lot of rain going on right now. Where you are you Lisa also?
It's pouring rain
the
right now. Yes.
pouring rain? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
I'm in Alexandria
Oh, okay, yeah.
and it's
I'm in
pouring
McLean.
rain and I love
Pouring
it.
rain.
I love it. I love it. You can't hear it? I've got the door open.
No, we can't hear it. But I can't hear it because I already have it going on, here in the background.
I'm a
But,
big fan of rain. Oh my God.
so you must have missed that in Saudi Arabia, obviously.
Yeah. I miss
Mhm.
that a lot. It got to the point where I was looking for rain vacations. I looked
Oh,
at vacations where I could go and just be in the rain. And it happened to me once. I went to Thailand and it rained the entire 10 days I was there, and I was the happiest clam ever. And everyone
really?
with me was miserable. They were miserable. They couldn't go to the beach, and miserable there
Oh.
wasn't sun. And I was so happy.
Well, there was a reporter, the weather reporter in Los Angeles one time, and I was watching, and she said, "Look, I mean, it doesn't rain much there. Look, I can see a drop of rain here. I saw can you see this drop of rain? It's really happening now." So that's what Saudi Arabia is probably like,
Yeah.
and
it
that's
doesn't
what this
rain
is
much.
like.
Yeah. And there are parts that do rain a lot in Saudi Arabia, but not in Riyadh.
Mm.
There's
But
not
there
much
are,
rain in the desert here. That's
yeah,
for sure. But
yeah. So
I did have one space related question. Are either Saudi Arabia or UAE, either one of those two countries, and I would probably not ask about other countries, but those two countries, are they interested in reusable rocket idea, developing reusable rockets like, well, India is doing it, China is doing it, of course, obviously SpaceX and Bezos have done that here. So are those two countries do they have any interest in
I've
that type
not
of thing?
I've not heard anything about
That's
that
what,
at all. And again, it goes back to budgets. So, why recreate the wheel if you can hitch a ride on others and not have to spend that kind of money? And
but
and also with the
yeah, you
price of
said that UAE has a budget of like $35 billion for space, which
well, they
is
want to
larger
do
than.
right. They want to do exploration. They're doing a lot of Mars. They've got a lot of Mars. They've got a lot of lunar types of things planned. I
Mm-hmm.
don't see them building their own rockets, but again, I've not heard
Yeah.
anything about that. I do think also, you have to understand too, the price of crude has been in 59.60 until the war happened. The price of crude
Yeah.
was 59.60, 62. So
Yeah.
that is a very big problem for the Gulf states. That they're used to having when they were doing, really, really well, when crude is trading at 120, 130, it's flowing in and they can do all kinds of infrastructure projects and all kinds of big things. But when the price of crude is trading at 59, 62, whatever it was before the war, it's gone up. It went up to over 100, right? It went up to 100 and something at one point. So those things matter. So I think that they've been an austerity budget for the last couple of years until most recently. So I don't know what that means, but I think budgets budgets matter. And space is only one thing that they want to do.
Yeah,
Saudi and
exactly.
UAE have a lot of goals and a lot of things that they're doing, big projects. I mean, they're building a pipeline now for the oil. You heard about that?
Yeah.
A pipeline across the country.
East to
They've
west.
got
Yeah.
they've got a train, they've got a high-speed train between Abu Dhabi and Dubai. They've got enormous infrastructure projects. So space is not the only thing they're doing. And the price of oil has not been very favorable the last couple of years. So the war has boosted that a little bit, but brought on other problems with it, right?
Mhm.
So I've not heard anything about them building their own reusable rockets. And I don't know why they would. That doesn't sound like a decision that they would. They're very shrewd, and I don't know if they'd make that decision. But I don't
Well, I
know.
think Saudi
I don't know.
Arabia is very much interested in going into nuclear industry, nuclear
Yep.
energy area.
Yep.
Obviously they're trying to write and agree on some agreement with Trump, and that sort of got scuttled.
Right.
But it'll probably come back, and it'll probably happen.
Oh, well, he's
Somehow.
trying to hold it over them to sign on to. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the latest. Well, the UAE launched its nuclear energy program about 15 years ago, around 2009, 8, 9.
Right. Yeah.
So they've been using nuclear for energy for quite a while. Yeah, I mean it's interesting. They're really doing some very big projects, and again, these are also countries where they've got social welfare programs for citizens. So they prop up jobs, and this is why also, if you've heard of Vision 2030, or it used to be Vision 2010, Vision 2020, Vision 2021, Vision 2025, all these countries have different economic visions to diversify away from oil and gas because they realize oil and gas isn't going to last forever. And they need to get more private sector jobs. And so they're trying to increase different industries and boost those ability for the locals to work in the private sector, in private industry, because these countries, no matter how much oil they pump, they cannot sustain paying and people's salaries. They've got millions of, Saudi's got many millions of citizens. UAE has about 1 million Emiratis, but you just can't sustain government jobs. and at high pay. We're not talking about piddly pay. We're talking about good paying government jobs. And so the governments really want to diversify away from oil and gas, create these industries, get more employed in the private sector, get more entrepreneurial activity, boost the economy through more more grassroots type of interest with the young people. And space has a unique way of doing that, right? So
Yeah, and actually, about speaking of about 2 weeks ago or so in White House, Trump trumpeted, like, pun not intended, um, four advanced reactor companies that reached criticality, and they brought them to the White House and all that. And I would not be surprised, or I think it will be an interesting thing to see if any of these countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE and all that, they really need this, and if they would be willing to go in the direction for advanced reactors, which is called Generation 4 reactors. And that's something that they should know about, learn about, and think about. I think they would be willing to invest big in those things. Just one piece of thought for you,
I need to close this out. I have company
Yeah.
coming over. So,
Okay.
Lisa, great seeing you this way and talking to you again. And I hope we do it soon. If you do get to Las Vegas, let us know.
I will.
And,
You
I
and Dr.
suggest
Sherry, I
wait till
will.
it's a little cooler, but or
Yeah.
bring your Saudi clothes either way. So,
All right, I will do that.
thank everybody for
Thank you.
joining us. Joe, very good to see you again. I don't know
Good
very
to
much
see
about
you.
what you're new doing, but if you want to send me an email and you want some PR about it to tell me what you're doing, let me know.
I'd
So,
be glad to. Thank you. Appreciate that.
everybody have a great rest of the weekend and appreciate your being here.
Thank
Keep
you all.
looking up
Thanks.
and
Thank you.
pray for
I'll
friends.
email you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Thank you all very much.
Okay.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.